Well, folks, this is primarily a booktube channel. And if you clicked here for book reviews and say I'm not at all into politics and I don't care, then move on and come back hopefully one of these days. But however, in 2 days, the United States will elect a new president, along with new senators, new governors, and new members of Congress. As a European observer, I have one pressing question. How on earth can this race even be close? How is it possible that a candidate who behaves like a would-be dictator, a con man, a misogynist, a racist and malignant narcissist, a man that gives oral sex to a microphone, has the support of 75 to 78 million Americans? 1 week ago, this candidate held an event at Madison Square Garden in New York, this iconic stage, this iconic hall. He described it as a beautiful expression of love. Well, let's take a look inside Madison Square Garden.
Illegals, they get whatever they want, don't they?
They're on the side of the terrorists. She is the devil, whoever screamed that out.
Her and her pimp handlers will destroy our country.
She is the Antichrist, the first Samoan Malaysian low IQ. I love you, Donald. I mean, what?
Well, I hear no love here, at least by my definition of love. I hear voices of fear-mongering and hate. I hear echoes of people pouring kerosene and calling it hope, as the singer and songwriter Gretchen Peters poignantly described in her song Lowlands some years ago when Trump was elected for the first time. In the last week, a Swedish poll asked, who would you vote for if you were eligible to vote in the United States presidential election? For Swedes, the choice was not even close. 79% supported Harris, with the orange man trailing 67 points behind at 12%. In Germany, about 80% of respondents said they would vote for Kamala Harris. Most people who watch my videos have not subscribed to the channel. It takes just a click and you help this channel grow. Please do so that we can reach our next goal, which is 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Let's move on with the video. So why is there such a huge difference in political sentiment between Europeans and Americans? Are we Europeans all communists and Marxists for our policies on healthcare, free school meals and paid vacation? Not quite. It's not a matter of ideology, but of vastly different social values and political structures. And while neither Kamala Harris nor Tim Walz represent radical left ideals, at most they're social democrats, the social safety nets we take for granted here in Europe are viewed as radical by many, many people in the United States. The influence of evangelicals in American politics is one of the reasons why, I guess. One significant reason for the divide is, of course, the influence of evangelicals. Evangelical Christians represent a large and influential voting bloc in the United States, which is nearly absent completely in Europe. The vast majority of evangelicals support Trump because of his positions on abortion, on LGBTQ+ rights, and so-called religious freedom, which is primarily understood as freedom for Christians, not for Muslims. During his presidency, Trump appointed 3 conservative justices, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett, who ultimately overturned Roe v. Wade, the right to abortion for every American woman. Trump's claim that everyone wanted Roe v. Wade returned to the states may resonate with evangelicals, but it's far from universally true. From this demographic also emerges a broader aversion to LGBTQ+ rights, particularly against transgender individuals. In a recent rally in North Carolina, Trump said, quote, "We will teach our children to love our country, honor our history, and respect our great American flag. We will remove critical race theory and transgender insanity from our schools." Such rhetoric, amplified in targeted ads, further fuels fears among his base, stoking concerns that don't resonate in secular Europe, where religion plays a much, much smaller role in public life than in the United States. Well, let's listen to Pastor Samuel Rodriguez from California, who recently attended a Trump rally for evangelicals as a speaker.
I live in California, and I have 7 little ones. And I know for a fact, it's not hype, the enemy is coming after our children. And if the enemy doesn't kill our children in the womb, he is attempting to kill our children in the classroom with ideologies and social constructs that are out of alignment with the word and the will of God. So this election is about what? I know it's about inflation and the economy and immigration and religious liberty and the war in Ukraine. I know it's all that, but it's about our children. So I'm sorry, before I leave, I believe there's enough faith in this room right now.
Rodriguez speaks of the enemies coming for our children and calls himself a man of God. The others are representing Satan. We have heard that often in this election campaign and even earlier. Social welfare and the individualist divide is the next headline here. Another major divergence in between Europe and America is in attitudes towards social welfare and government responsibility. America's comparatively younger history and its strong tradition of individualism, favoring minimal government intervention and economic liberalism, clash with the European ethos of social responsibility. In Europe, where I live, nearly everyone benefits from some form of social welfare. The idea of free healthcare, of paid parental leave, and long vacations is the norm. It's not a socialist, communist outlier. Consider the stark contrast. The U.S. Family and Medical Leave Act, FMLA, allows for 12 weeks of unpaid leave for childbirth. In Sweden, where I live, parents get 480 days of leave per child, with 390 days at 80% pay. Europeans see this as a basic right. For many Americans, such policies would be seen as wildly socialist and be neglected even by those who could desperately need them in their own lives. The next topic is, of course, migration and the stands in Europe and in the United States. Migration, a critical issue on both sides of the Atlantic, has contributed to a rise of far-right parties in Europe and likewise has been a significant topic in Trump's campaigns. Yet there are nuances, of course. In the United States, many legal and undocumented immigrants work low-wage jobs, contributing to the economy and stabilizing certain prices. By contrast, it's much harder for asylum seekers to work in Sweden or in Germany. Despite these differences, even European countries are struggling to handle migration's effects on housing and social services. In Germany, we saw the rise of the far-right AfD up to 10 to 15% nationwide, and in September to 30+% in state elections in the east of the country. In Sweden, the far-right Sweden Democrats have around 20% of the vote, and they influence already the politics of the government. But we are far, far away from having them win majorities like it's possible in the US. Let's hear how Donald Trump recently spoke about migrants in a rally in North Carolina.
The day I take the oath of office, the migrant invasion ends and the restoration of our country begins. The United States is now an occupied country. Can you imagine having to say, we're an occupied country? But it will soon be an occupied country no longer. On November 5th, 2024, it will be Liberation Day in America. On day one, I will launch the largest deportation program of criminals in American history. It's going to be the largest deportation of criminals. We're going to get them out of here fast. I will rescue every city and town that has been invaded and conquered, and we will put the vicious and bloodthirsty criminals in jail or kick them the hell out of our country. And I am hereby calling for the death penalty for any migrant that kills an American citizen or a law enforcement officer.
The United States are an occupied country, as if a foreign army had invaded. In other speeches and so-called press conferences where he speaks only for himself and allows no questions, Trump has called migrants criminals, lunatics, vermin who would poison the blood of America. That reminds of the language of Adolf Hitler. Nobody, though, has said that Trump is like Hitler, except his own VP candidate J.D. Vance, who some years ago has warned that Donald Trump was about to become America's Hitler until he completely changed his mind and become his pal. Studies show that immigrants are no more likely to commit crimes than native-born citizens, and notably, the majority of America's notorious serial killers were born in the USA. Next topic I want to talk about is the media divide. The American media landscape further shapes the polarization, definitely. Fox News, the most successful so-called news channel in America, is infamous for its blatant bias. Watching shows like Fox and Friends, The Five, and Hannity, which I did in spring, it's clear that news is a misnomer. It's nothing but propaganda that millions of people swallow daily as news. On the other side, there is also biased MSNBC, a Democrat-leaning network which is owned by Comcast, a company that splits its donations between both parties. But neither side is entirely representative of the average American experience. I looked it up. Well, most hosts, from Sean Hannity to Rachel Maddow, are multi-millionaires, far removed from the struggles of everyday people. Recently, I have turned to more independent journalism on YouTube, provided by Democrat-leaning vloggers such as the excellent David Pakman, who is publishing videos on his YouTube channel on a daily basis. Pakman has become so huge with his channel that his show is having guests like Bob Woodward or Pete Buttigieg. Elitism and the price of politics. Well, that is also a very good question. What the voters in Donald Trump's base seem to appreciate is that he never speaks like a politician, that he does not shy away from saying four-letter words, that he seems to tell it like it is. For millions, he seems to be someone who finally takes on the elites. They tend to overlook, though, that Donald Trump was born a multi-millionaire as a little kid already, that he had never to do hard work, that he would never let in the regular visitor of one of his rallies to Mar-a-Lago or to the courts where he plays golf with his rich friends. Despite his anti-elite rhetoric of wanting to drain the swamp, his administration was packed with wealthy elites. Former Exxon CEO Rex Tillerson became Secretary of State. Goldman Sachs hedge fund manager Steve Mnuchin became Secretary of the Treasury. Billionaire Wilbur Ross was Commerce Secretary, and billionaire Betsy DeVos was Education Secretary. The average American doesn't see representation in either party's candidates. And this, I think, is reflected in the astounding cost of American elections. The 2024 cycle is projected to surpass $15.9 billion. Compare that with Sweden's 2022 election, which costs around $46.25 million for a population of 10.6 million people. Much of America's campaign funding comes from private wealth and corporations, which inevitably influences political decisions, a reality that undermines American democracy's claim of representing the people. We the people, remember? Hillary Clinton famously said in 2016 that Trump voters are a basket of deplorables, and recently Joe Biden was accused to have called them garbage after a Trump rally speaker had called Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage and claimed that, warning here, adult warning, that Latinos make so many babies because they never pull out when they come. Sorry for the language, but this is actually a quote from the presidential candidate Donald Trump's rally. There are several outlets on YouTube that regularly visit Trump rallies and actually listen to the base of the 78-year-old real estate mogul. One of these outlets is the excellent channel The Good Liars, who met this voter in Las Vegas. Listen to what he has to say.
And what would you like to see the military do when Trump becomes president?
I'd like to see the military go after everybody in Washington, D.C. and arrest them all. And the ones that are guilty, they need to be hung. And they need to be hung in public.
And you'd like Donald Trump to do that?
I'd like the military to do that.
With Donald Trump's blessing?
Absolutely.
Violence is a fear after November 5, and listening to people like this guy here does not make us and me sleep any lighter. American exceptionalism, the idea that America is the greatest country in the history of the planet, is a narrative that both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris uphold. Harris has often said in rallies that only in America it was possible that the daughter of a single mom from California and a teacher from small rural Nebraska could run for the highest office of the country. Well, nevertheless, both of them, both Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, are millionaires today. Trump and Vance are even way richer. To many Europeans, the idea that you must be a millionaire to run for president is very much alien. In Sweden, Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson's net worth is around $200,000, while Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez's net worth is about $190,000. They prove that in many parts of the world, leadership isn't synonymous with extreme wealth, and they could say only in Spain, only in Sweden, but they don't. The stakes of the 2024 election is democracy versus Trumpism. The upcoming election offers Americans a choice, albeit a challenging one. On one side, a vote for Harris and Walz supports a flawed but functioning democracy. On the other hand, a vote for Trump and his allies threatens a return to a more divided, fearful society, a regression marked by attacks on rights, of greater wealth disparity and emboldened authoritarianism. Trump's plan for Project 2025 outlines a rollback of public broadcasting, a dismantling of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the elimination of critical race theory from education. The project envisions shifting control of education to individual states, likely leading to more book bans and a sanitization of America's history. No more talk about slavery, no more talk about genocide against Native Americans. Internationally, a Trump win could destabilize alliances, particularly with authoritarian-leaning leaders like Hungary's Viktor Orban, while straining ties with traditional allies in Europe. So let me finish this video with a call to American voters. This election will impact not only the United States of America, but the world at large. Americans now have the chance to reject authoritarianism, to say no to the division and fear that have taken root in the country, and to choose a future grounded in democracy, flawed though it may be. The world is watching and hoping that a clear majority will vote with unity in mind, turning away from the dangerous pull of populist and violent extremism. This is the moment to decide what kind of country the United States will be. Make your vote count. Thank you very much for watching this video.